Okay, you ready? Here we go. Good morning, everyone. It's Gord here, coming to you from the Gann Brewing Company in Gananoque. I'm here with my friend Dennis O'Connor, owner of the O'Connor Gallery, town councillor, and activist, who's going to help us understand some of the history that got us to the point where we are today. And without any further ado, I'm going to share Dennis with you all.
First of all, thank you very much for listening in. And I'm sure once this is recorded, we'll have just a huge crowd coming in on this. But first of all, I do want to acknowledge that the Gann Brewery is hosting this particular event. And it's really nice to see local businesses involved with the Pride Committee. And, you know, it's important to get as many people and as many businesses involved as possible. I had a very, very proud moment this morning. And that moment was for the first time in the town of Gananoque, our small little town of 5,500 souls. We raised the Pride flag at Town Hall, and it was a beautiful moment. And I must admit that I've been to many flag raisings, but this one was the most emotional I've had in many years. It could be that I'm just really old and everything makes me very emotional, but you know, the interesting story that happened here was when it was time to take down the town of Gananoque flag, it was stuck. They couldn't get it down. So town staff very quickly got the bucket truck at great expense to come down to town hall to fix the problem so that we could raise the rainbow flag today. And as I said, a beautiful moment. The topic today is talking about our early history, our history from the Stonewall riots up until today, and the struggles we've had as a community to get our rights. And the first thing to remember is that Stonewall happened in 1969, which I know there are many of us here that aren't old enough to remember that. And quite possibly, you know, as they say, it's very last century, but Stonewall was the pivotal moment in queer history. It was a moment when the police raided a bar in New York City called the Stonewall Inn. They raided that bar because, and it was frequently raided, I might add, by the police because of mostly the drag queens and of course the disreputable people that hung out at this place. The raid happened. The community became very angry and they decided to fight back. It was a very pivotal moment. It was also a moment that was really thanks to drag queens, because it was really drag queens that started this great fight. And you know, I know that sometimes we get irritated by them. Oh my goodness, they're out there in the front again. But you know what? We owe so much to drag queens and early people that struggled so hard to get our rights for us. Stonewall was pivotal, no question. But from 1969 until later, until much later in the program, you know, there were still lots of struggles. I, as a young man, moved to the city of Montreal in 1976. That's also last century, but at any rate. When I arrived in Montreal, it was very much not illegal. And I was witness to an awful lot of police raids. I used to go to the Bottom Stick, and I used to go to Bud's on Stanley Street, and it was frequently raided by the police. We had this little early warning system, so if the bartender thought that there was about to be a raid or he saw a policeman peer through that door, he would flick the lights. Flicking the lights meant run, hide, whatever. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, when you consider that the public spaces that you went to that were considered to be safe spaces for you had to have this early warning system to make sure that you could get out, because our community was not just made of young people, but we had doctors, lawyers, even priests, professional people that were part of the community that would go out to these bars as well. And they were the ones that were, I think, probably the most at risk, because this is what was going on. Because the city of Montreal would arrest everyone, take all the information. You had to show your ID. In some cases, they even did some fingerprinting. But the list of people that were arrested was given to the press, and the police encouraged the press to print these names in the newspaper. Of course, what happened with this was there was an uptick in suicides, because some of these people were professionals that were really very deep in the closet, and there were even some that were married. At that time, at that age, when I grew up as a young man, and I might start this off with saying that I didn't have an official coming out. And I've never really understood coming out things, because I've just grown up gay. I was very fortunate in having parents who were very understanding and encouraged my being who I am. So I'm very grateful to my mother and father. And so this idea of coming out was complicated, because in my mind, and I think it still holds today, that when you do finally come out and you're true to yourself, it is easier. It is easier. It might not be if you're quite young, elementary school or junior high or something. I mean, I was really openly gay from elementary school. And as that, I became, in my defense, and I think a lot of gay people in that period too, the way to survive this was to really be a comedian. Became a great storyteller. You became really, really funny, because it took the emphasis away a little bit from the fact that you were different than everyone. You just became a really fun character. And that's how I survived. And I think it's how I continue to survive even today. A good sense of humor is always great. But with that good sense of humor came a lot of responsibilities. And, once I was in some of the raids in Montreal, it was a real shock for me, because I'd never had a problem with the police ever. Back in those days as well, and I don't know if it's as prevalent anymore, but because a lot of people were in the closet, it was very difficult to meet people. There were all kinds of cruising areas as well. In Montreal, there was Vale Street and Tumber Street, which were very, very busy. I do remember being one evening cruising in that very spot in the alleyways, only to find out that the police arrived again. In they came with horses and with their police cars. And I actually managed to escape arrest, because I threw myself underneath the car and I hid. And I stayed there all night. I was afraid that if I came out, there was going to be a policeman around. So, there were an awful lot of very amazing adventures that happened back there too. But the consequences were very serious, especially if you were not an out person. Because I was in Montreal, I think that there was uh, there were a lot of people who really wanted to be with gay people. Gay people were the outcasts. We were the ones with all the taste, the flair, and everything. And we were quite often the first people invited to parties where they wanted to have a good time. So my experience in Montreal was very good, very positive. In 1981, and I do want to get that date right, I believe it was 1981, so I apologize. My memory is, yes, it was in February of 81 where we had the Toronto Bathhouse raids. That was really the true beginning of our rights being fought for in Canada. And a pivotal moment for sure. The police had conducted raids on 4 bathhouses in Toronto, and they weren't very gentle about it. They quite literally just broke into these places and started to break, smash, and destroy these bathhouses. It was a pretty shocking time. And what happened in that case was the community came out. They came out of the bars, and much like Stonewall, people were running from bar to bar on Church Street and saying, there's a protest, we're having a protest, let's all get out onto the street. And in Toronto's case, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people closed down the streets, and there was a massive protest. The protest was large enough that the police backed off, and there was an agreement not to actually continue this for very much further. Now, this goes on, and this was February of 1981. I was still living in Montreal at the time, and Montreal brought out a number of activists who joined the Toronto protests and had a protest in Montreal as well. So it became a national event. What happened in 1981 as well was that later in that year was more or less the official breakout of AIDS. It was not called AIDS at first. It was called the gay disease, and just that. No one knew exactly what it was. And I was in Montreal at a time when people really were kind of crazy and not taking care and enjoying themselves to the full extent of whatever it was they were into. And it was a very exciting time to be gay because we were living on the edge. And because of that, people followed us. They followed our trends. I mean, we went from the lumberjack t-shirts, shirts, mustaches, the clones, to wearing earrings that suddenly straight people thought were cool. And, we were very cutting edge at that time. So a lot of people that did start those trends were picked up by straight people. And even though they weren't aware of the symbolism that we had at that time, because at that time, of course, if you wore your jewelry or if you flagged on the right-hand side, you were considered a man. And if you was on the left-hand side, you were tops. And when you went into a bar, rather than wasting your time trying to figure out whether you really were going to be compatible sexually with someone, everyone had these sort of unwritten rules and symbols that helped out the entire process. It went even further than that with flagging. And flagging was actually the handkerchiefs that people wore in their back pockets. And these flags, if you were everything from navy blue to red to black to orange. I think there was probably 50 different colors. And if you could remember all of them, you could certainly find out what you were interested in and who you wanted to be with. A lot of communication didn't have to happen because you wore it on your sleeve if you liked. So when the AIDS epidemic broke out, there was a real panic within the community, not just the gay community, but the straight community as well. I remember very much that cover on Newsweek, one of the very first times they've ever had an openly gay couple on their cover, and it was to illustrate this gay disease. It was kind of an odd thing because I think a lot of people were very proud to see members of our community on this cover, but the headline was not a good headline. A pandemic, if you like, not really a pandemic, but this scare that happened because of this spread throughout the city of Montreal and throughout North America and the world, really. But it was, I can only speak about my experience in Montreal at the time. But there were gay establishments that were closed because people didn't go to them anymore. There were waiters and hairdressers that lost their jobs because it was assumed that they were gay. Nobody wanted to have their hair done by someone who had this disease that they didn't understand. It was a very difficult time for me. The help that we were getting from government agencies and from hospitals and medical professionals was not a great deal. My partner of 5 years at that time came down with AIDS. And it was decided at that point that we would move to London, Ontario, where they had better facilities, had better care for people with AIDS. There was an AIDS specialist at that time in that city. And we moved there. The last 5 years of his life, we lived in London. And I was very active in the AIDS movement. The AIDS movement is a very important part of our history as well, because what we're talking about, it was pivotal that it just brought the entire community together, the entire gay lesbian community, even though lesbians were not affected the same way. I mean, they weren't getting affected. Gay men were. They were very much at the forefront of actually caring for their gay brothers. It was, I really do believe that very little would have happened in the way of caring for those dying if it were not for our lesbian sisters. You know, there's always been this question of why is it LGBT? Why is it not alphabetical with gay, lesbian? And the answer to that is because to honor our gay sisters, our lesbian sisters, they were put first in that alphabet. So, and I am forever grateful for the women who have worked very, very hard to help in the care of people with AIDS at that period. And also the way they fought for gay rights, lesbian rights, and especially at this time with AIDS care. The community came together very, very strong at this point because we had to protect ourselves. But that we had problems within our own community. That there were relationships with two men, and one discovered that they had AIDS. They were quite often very much alone. This was a time that a lot of families abandoned their gay children. And it was not that rare that people with AIDS would be brought into the hospital on a ward that was only AIDS patients. And on a ward where they were all kept separate. many of those people heartbreaking to help out these people as much as I could. I was with my partner every day. I went to see. And I remember walking down the hallways, and I would walk by these rooms where I would see young men in their rooms by themselves. And I remember this one day asking a nurse if such and such a patient in this room had anyone visit. She said, no one comes to visit. I was talking with my partner about it. I told him about this, and he said to me, he said, go get some magazines, get some breaks or whatever it is that they do. Go call on him tomorrow. Yeah, I'll see him. And so I made that decision to do that. And the next day, the elevator door opened, and I started to walk down the hallway. And it so I did get involved in AIDS committee once when I was on their board. It was actually one of the first AIDS committee boards in the country. It was very, very active. And when my beau finally died, I had set up a PWA foundation. It was a tremendous force in our community. And it was heartbreaking to have watched him slowly die over 5 years without much help. So it was, he was very active. He was very much, he believed that we needed to gain our rights. And so Stonewall Inn, Bathhouse raids were a very big thing. But at the same time that gay men, if you like, were concerned about their rights and everything. The thing about gay people, and I'm sorry I'm using terms that, you know, I am 67 years old, we used to all be called gay. Now we have the alphabet, which is great. It's great because it shows how inclusive we are as a community. And I think that there's nothing better. And I think that it could be up a lot longer because we need to prop each other up, to support each other. But I find that our community has always fought for people who are the underdogs, people who have been mistreated, people who have been targeted. And I myself have been in many marches for women's rights, abortion rights, the right to marriage rights. You know, and that's another pivotal moment in our struggle to gain our equality rights. And it was actually in 2005, the Civil Marriage Act, that Canada was able to say that it was the 4th country in the world to accept marriage equality. And what a fabulous time that was. The celebrations were amazing. And in fact, in one of the latest census, there were almost 77,000 gay marriages. In fact, I think it's actually become so exciting that we probably outnumbered a lot of straight, quote unquote, regular people with this this whole idea of marriage. That was a very, very hard fought battle. And I'm very proud to say that this happened. And I have my producer is going to say something.
Dennis, we're just going to move quickly inside. It's just, I think the background
Okay.
noise is too much.
I don't know if you heard that, but we're going to step inside.
It's going to take a minute-long break. Just gonna sit by that. There's a little table beside that. I'll come back. Good to go.
Oh, we're good to go?
Yeah.
Are we on right now?
Yeah.
Wow, how about that? Sorry about that, everyone. We're inside the Brewery right now, which is really lovely. It's a great space to come and sit down and try out all those local beers. Outdoors was getting a little crowded with a lot of people enjoying themselves, and that's what we want. You know, it's this is a real people place, a hangout, and it's open to everyone, including our community. So you got to come out and support them when you're here in Gananoque. It's a great spot. So I'm not quite sure where I was. I think we had a pee break there.
Gay marriage.
Oh, we were talking about gay
marriage.
marriage. Absolutely. Thank goodness for board here. Anyway, you know what? The struggle is real. And we can't sit back on our laurels and think that we have our rights. We don't have to fight for our rights. We don't have to worry about anything. We're far from them. And I mean, just recently in the US, where Texas has decided to really upset the whole Roe v. Wade thing, is very disturbing. As queer people, we should be out there, outraged, absolutely outraged, and continue to march and try to make a difference, not just in Texas, but everywhere. We have a problem. And unfortunately, the right are not helping us through this. And they're, I think, quite intent on making sure that a lot of these decisions are reversed. And I truly believe that once we've dealt with, or once they have dealt with abortion down in the US, queer people are next. We're definitely going to be part of that. So we can't just sit back and say it's not our problem. All of these things are our problem. We need to be there to fight. And we also owe it to our sisters to fight for their rights to their own bodies and being able to continue to have dominion on their body. I mean, the whole idea is ridiculous that this should be happening, but it's real, and we're living in it. We're looking at history reversing itself. And I can assure you that this is not just in the US, this is around the world. And we could have the very same problem here. Just recently, in Parliament, there was a motion to ban conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is nothing short of torture. Absolutely nothing short of that. It's outrageous that this would be going on. And we have a local conservative MP. I don't care if I say his name or not, but Michael Barrett voted not to ban conversion therapy. This is a man who I think does not understand what he has done, but we need to tell him what he's done. And one of the ways of doing that is to make sure that he's not elected. We need to be more progressive. We have to watch ourselves constantly. We do have a problem in Canada, perhaps not as severe as in the US, but we need to continue that battle because the battle that we have here can spread, and the things that we win, that idea is positive as well. Perhaps Canada can show the US how ridiculous these ideas are. So don't sit back thinking that you're not going to have any problems in the future with your rights. And I know that it's very easy for young queer people to continue acting like there's nothing they have to worry about. But trust me, you do, and you need to listen to your elders. That's me too. And you need to listen to your elders and continue the fight. Don't stop now, but continue. And we have many more battles in the future. And as a queer community, we need to stay strong. Stay strong and fight for all those rights. Not just for queer rights, but just the rights of humans. We are all in this fight together. I'm very proud of my being in a situation where I've been able to lead many people through a lot of these tough things, but you know, it's important that the fight keeps up. I also want to apologize. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the map, but I'm not feeling very well today. That's what old age does to you. But you know, I hope this isn't being jumped around too much. But I'm very proud of our town. I'm very proud of the Thousand Tribe organization that continues despite the fact that this is a very small town with a very small population of people, that they're able to pull off these sorts of events, to actually have these talks that are going on. It's a great little town, and I think we're getting very exciting in this bar as well. I think maybe we might have attracted an awful lot of people into the Gananoque Brewery just by our being here. So I'm very pleased that everyone's coming out to the bar. I think that we're getting a little bit more excited and busy here. I would like to go on about our past and how many of our various subcultural groups have fit in this as well. And one of them, of course, is the leather community, both gay and lesbian. The leather community has been very active and has provided a great deal of backing when it comes to social justice, despite the fact that they are quite often seen as outside the group. They were also there at Stonewall, a very active member of the protests at Stonewall, and very much so at the trial Bathhouse. Because of their outrageous behavior, they're quite often not seen as welcome as part of our community, because they are different from the rest of us, right? The same went on for the bear community, and I was one of the founders of the Toronto Bear Group, and Bear Buddies Toronto is what we called it actually. And this was at a time when everyone was about the little kids. Everybody was just all about the young, gorgeous, built guys. This is who they touted. But we had a sub community in there, and it was made up of bigger, heavier set, very, they just didn't fit into this group. And they were quite often excluded. And what happened was they became a very, very sexy part of our community. And again, socially very active in our communities. I'm very proud of having been a part of that. And again, we can't stress this too much, but if we go all the way back to Stonewall and to the Bathhouse, the St. Charles Club in Toronto, where every Halloween people came out and they were wearing their dresses, all to the enjoyment of the crowd that brought tomatoes and whatnot to toss at these queens. These queens were brave. They were the bravest people we had in our community. They fought for the right to be who they wanted to be. I think that when we look at the alternative members of our community, they're the ones that have really kept the battle up. And so the leather community, the bear community, the queens, everyone, are wonderful radical lesbians and drag kings. But I think that the time that I've been alive for the last 67 years, I think that I've lived in a very interesting historical period with the queer community. And I can tell you that when the decision was made at some point that we were going to be referring to ourselves as queers, it was so hard for me. Old people still have trouble saying I'm queer. And I still have this little struggle to turn it around. Although it's getting easier all the time, right? I mean, one doesn't want to be old-fashioned too much, but I have a great respect for the community. I have great respect for queer people. And I'm very, very proud to be part of that. I think that we are an example for the world on how to get on together. The way that we can continue this great legacy that we have as queer community is to continue to fight, not just for our rights, but for everyone's rights. Never ever forget where we came from, and it wasn't that long ago that a great many people died to get our rights today. And never forget our brothers and sisters, never forget the people who died of AIDS, and never forget the women who took care of us through this period. We have new struggles now. We have new struggles with Indigenous peoples. We have new struggles with all kinds of factions in our society that we need to help. Don't ignore any subset in our society. You have to continue to fight and keep that going. Now I feel like I'm preaching. Well, there you go. You get a little bit of everything when you have a whole hour and all this excitement going on and beer. And although I haven't had any, I don't think my pills will let me have it, but I'm having just the best, freshest water that Gananoque has to offer. Same thing's really. There's a lot of things happening this weekend. If you're an ally or if you're a queer person, come out. Pride is a very important cultural event. And a lot of people say, why are we doing this? What's wrong with not having straight pride? I mean, it's so ludicrous. The idea of having a straight pride is ridiculous. You get to be part of society all year round with more festivals and rights and everything else than most people have ever had. Pride is a celebration of our victories, of our community, and the fight that we continue to have. It's a great party. You know what? Can you really have a queer event that's not a great party? Because really, honestly, who knows better how to throw a party And you know what? So please go to Pride events. Talk about it. Talk about your queer friends. Get together with them. Call someone you love, someone queer that you love, and say happy Pride. Even if you're queer, call up your queer friends and say happy Pride. We fought a long, long, difficult battle to be able to have our pride. And so we must never forget that. Because I remember living on the outside. I remember being arrested by the police. I remember being terrified of every police officer I ever bumped into. I remember feeling that I was on the outside. But I will say one thing. My being on the outside really kind of made me feel good about myself. I am probably different than a lot of people, but you know what? Being special, being who we are the special people in this world. We are the gift that humanity has received. Never forget that. Anybody can say whatever they want about you. The one thing they can't take away from you is your special gift. And you can take that special gift and spread it and help our fellow human beings. We live in a very difficult time right now. And if there was ever a time in this world that we needed queer people to take a step out front, it's now. Don't forget our past. Our past is important. And yes, you're young, you're happy, you're living the life you've always wanted. You're not afraid, you're not, I would think that most people are not afraid. There are still people who have horrible struggles, and I don't want to forget those people. But one of the ways that would make it easier for you is to come out. Show people who you are. I'm actually kind of wearing out, and I know it's supposed to be a whole hour, but I think we've done it. And you know what? I'm happy to speak to people anytime. If you ever want to have a conversation, some mentoring, or even just a pat on the back, a nice hug, please call and have the best small town pride you could ever have, thanks to the organizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dennis. That was wonderful. And I apologize if the sound was spotty. It's not the best environment, but it is a good environment for people getting together and sharing. It was a wonderfully engaging and informative 45 minutes. And if you do want to talk to Dennis, come to his gallery. It's 152 King Street.
130.
Sorry, 130 King Street East in downtown Gananoque. It's a wonderful experience to wander around, look at the art. Right now, he has the show Lambda Rising.
Yeah, it's a queer show.
It's a queer show, and it's wonderful. There's so many textures and colors and things to please the eye.
And penises.
Yes, there are googly-eyed penises.
Yeah.
Those were my favorite. So thank you to everyone who joined us on these little journeys. And unfortunately, I don't have any way to fade to black or roll the credits other than to click this button that says end.
Thank you.